Thanks, Gareth. Thanks for having me along. I am with the Arts Council England, and I can answer the question about our policy really, really quickly. We haven't got one, so I can then go on to say a few other things. So, for those of you who don't know, Arts Council England is the development, advocacy and funding body for arts and culture in England, and about 4 years ago also took on responsibility for the strategic development of museums in England. So we now have this quite interesting mix. And I've been fascinated this morning because historically I'm an archaeologist. I then worked in museums quite a long time, and now I do kind of arts and cultural policy. So it's very interesting to see how some of these areas overlap and the similarities and dissimilarities. And I think funding first. I think that the simple point is obviously we encourage as diverse models and good models for funding arts organisations. And what we're more and more encouraging is that people do have diverse models. And they have sophisticated business models, and the two fit. And clearly, crowdfunding has a place in that, but it is only one very small part of it. We have a particular program called Catalyst, which is specifically about funding organisations to help build their fundraising capability and their fundraising expertise. And crowdfunding has been one small element of that. And we're just now evaluating the first round of projects. And anecdotally, I can just confirm what's already been said, in that it's quite hard work. It doesn't always achieve what you want it to achieve, and it works better with very small projects, better small projects than big projects. And as was very cleverly put, the last point, it will only work within a more sophisticated model of fundraising. There are professional rules about how to fundraise well, and those work for crowdfunding as well as anything else. And for fundraising, again, I did this a lot in museums. The ask for the money is kind of the smallest and, in many ways, the easiest part. It's the bit that comes before and after that are really important. And the bit that comes before is about the cultivation of the people you hope will fund you, and about brand alignment. So ideally, you get to a situation where you don't ever have to ask anyone for money. They are coming to you and saying they want to give you some money because they want to be associated with you. They align with your brand. They value what you're doing. And that's what it should be about. So if you are going to ask someone for money cold, don't bother. If you have not done all the work, it's also the case that it will fit within all the much wider digital communication. So unless you have very sophisticated Facebook and web and all those other things, don't bother crowdfunding. It must sit within all those. And then after the event, once somebody has given you money, the worst thing you can possibly do is then say thank you and never talk to them again. What you have to do is keep them loved, because firstly, the most likely person to give you money is someone who's already given you money. And the worst thing you want is someone out there saying, well, I gave them some money and they never spoke to me again. So understanding that crowdfunding fits within those rules of fundraising about brand alignment, about communication, about before and after, I think are really, really important. Crowdsourcing feels far less familiar within the arts and cultural world. We are incredibly interested in using digital means to understand our audiences. If you think most arts organisations, theatres, art galleries, the like, it is more transactional and it is more about audiences. So they are incredibly interested in knowing who you are, how old you are, where you live, how much you're prepared to pay for tickets, than they are simply about wanting you to, come onto a website and tag some stuff. That said, within museums, we've had examples, it is becoming more and more important. And the example that hasn't been mentioned today, which is, I think, has been most successful in museum/galleries, is the Our Paintings project, run by the Public Catalogue Foundation. They put online every single oil painting in a public collection in this country, and then ask the public to tag it, and it's been very successful. And I would add at that point, it's interesting, earlier we were talking about how this is a young person's game, and we need to wake up to that. Well, interestingly, with Our Paintings, it has appealed to a slightly older audience, people who like oil paintings and have got a bit of quality time where they can sit at a computer and look at oil paintings. And I would just throw into this, within policy at the moment, and health policy and local authorities, it is rapidly not obesity or smoking and things that are the most important measure of a healthy society. It is isolation. More and more local authorities are more and more worried about the members in their society who are isolated because they are the ones who pose a big risk to health. And I think this is an area where museums and archaeologists have an incredibly powerful role to play in going out to those people in their houses, making them feel wanted, making them feel involved, and then helping them into other parts of our world. So the idea that There are lots of lonely people out there who feel a bit isolated, who you could get tagging paintings and then get along to something you're doing in your museum, I think is incredibly powerful. I think those were the key things. I'd also, very briefly, I mean, again, looking at comparisons, in the arts world, we had something similar to MicroPasts. It was called Ideas Tap. Bigger, big thing that did pretty much the same sort of thing. Tried to link practitioners together and tried to provide a platform. It was funded by the DeHaan Foundation. In many ways, it's very successful, but when the funding ran out earlier this year, there was no more funding, and they've had to close down. Some of what they've done has kind of moved on to another platform called, it's called the Hive, I think. Yes, it's called the Hive. So it is there, and I think this question about the extent to which we should be creating these beasts, or the extent to which we ought to be kind of floating things off and letting things find a life of their own is relevant. I think the last thing I'd say, going back as an archaeologist, I think as archaeologists we are incredibly good at knowing what we want to do. We're not very good at understanding what other people want to do and what other people want. And I think remembering that if we are offering something to the public, we need to be very sure it's something the public want, not something we want the public to want. And I think that's a useful test for us. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Hedley. Thank you very much.